How's it going, everybody? Happy Inktober. Today's word of the day is dream, and I really like that word. So let's get into it. When I first saw the prompt word dream, a couple of things came to mind at first, but what really started to come to my mind very, very clearly was the experience I've had with dreams, the importance of holding on to your dreams and making sure they're kept alive. I'm not talking in the sense of like you want to be a Super Bowl champion or you want to be, a pilot or something like that. What I'm talking about is your actual dreams you have at night. I was working at Domino's many years ago, and I was washing the dishes, and it kind of occurred to me. I said, it's been a while since I had a dream. I actually can't remember the last one. And I thought that was really weird. And I kept thinking about it. And then it just kind of the thought came and went. Every now and then I would wake up and I would think, I think I was having a bad dream, but I couldn't remember it. It never came clear to me. It never was there. It was just like, I think dreams are happening, but I can't remember them. And that was the strangest thing for me because as a person, especially a young person, I used to have the most vivid dreams in the world, bright shining colors, sometimes actually in black and white, but usually bright shining colors, and these just amazing scenic vistas, or I was on adventures with Inuyasha fighting demons. I was always doing something extraordinary in my dreams, and of course I had terrifying dreams too that happened. I think one of the things dreams are doing is they're trying to prepare you for trauma. And for years and years, I did this. This was normal. I used to be excited to fall asleep as a child because I knew I was going to fall asleep in my bed and then wake up flying with Superman across the metropolis. Or I was going to be beating up bad guys with Batman. Like I knew things were going to happen that were beyond my ability in the real world. And that's something that was so exciting about dreaming, is holding on to that. And then as I went on in life, they disappeared. And I thought to myself, I said, is this just a product of getting older? Do you not dream as much? Like, why is it I'm not dreaming? And I couldn't really figure it out. I didn't really know why. But as the years wore on some more, I kind of got fed up with it. I really didn't like it. And I started to just think to myself, is it possible there's something I'm doing behaviorally that's causing this to happen? So I went on with that thought. I kept sticking with it. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, dreams happen, they happen in the brain. And what's happened that's changed over the years? It's not just my age. That's not the only thing that's changed. And I wasn't exactly sure right away. But as I started to acknowledge my behavior, I realized, well, I can't fall asleep without earbuds in my ear listening to something. Usually it would be like some sort of podcast or something, or a YouTuber talking about some controversial topic. And I realized I couldn't really go a day or go an hour without always listening to something about something. Topics I wasn't even necessarily interested in, but I had fallen into this pit of needing constant stimulation in order to get by. I couldn't just exist in reality as its default. I couldn't accept the default of reality, that there's not constantly music following you around. There's not ideas constantly being shared in your ears. There's not always something in front of your eyes that's entertaining. And I remember thinking to myself, that's when the idea came to me. I was like, maybe it's because now my dreams aren't as exciting as whatever's going on my phone. And so I decided, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get off all of this. I'm going to stop doing this. And that was probably one of the hardest things I ever did in my life, was deciding I'm going to sit down and draw and I'm not going to listen to anything. I'm going to go to sleep and I'm not going to listen to anything. I'm just going to be alone with my thoughts. And oh boy, was that one of the hardest things I ever did for real. And I'd not been a person completely free of adversity in my life, but mentally, because I've been up against some tough stuff before, but mentally, that was one of the hardest things I ever did, to just endure 35 minutes of silence, to just focus on doing one thing and trying to push out other thoughts in my head, living in the now, as they say. That was one of the most difficult things I ever did. And so what I realized is I couldn't do it. I failed on it over and over and over again. I couldn't do it. I was going insane. But I realized, I said, I've got a big problem here. This is a big problem. And this is a big limitation that I didn't realize existed. And so I would have to set myself up timers, and I'd go, you got to do 10 minutes in complete silence of whatever it is you're doing. I would increase that over time. I started to pull away from it. And I every now and then would have a day where I didn't need it. And I was weird, and I was like, wow. And then I would realize, like, I got so much done today. I can't believe it. Look how much I got done. And then the next day would come, and my brain was just starving for it. And it's like, dude, you need to consume everything now. What are you doing? You didn't eat anything yesterday. And I would just be right back into that pit. And it was kind of like I think alcoholics call it a periodic, somebody who drinks themselves into oblivion, and then they can quit for like 3 months, and then they just do it again. It's a repeat and repeat and repeat. And I came to the conclusion of that. I said, Daniel, you're no better than someone who's addicted to some sort of narcotic or alcohol or a cigarette. Like, you're really no better than that. You're just addicted to this thing. What are we going to do to get off of it? And so that's when I had to wean myself off of it in a more strategic way. And I wouldn't go the whole day without listening to something. But what I would do is start later. So I'd not listen to anything till 9 in the morning, and then not listen to anything until 10 in the morning. And I would just keep repeating this until it eventually got to the point where my brain was adapting to less and less. Excuse me. And from there, I eventually got myself off of it, and I eventually became more mentally clear. And it was amazing how stuff that I thought I was doing as efficiently as I could do, I was suddenly doing it that much better, like working on a comic book page whenever I'm working for my publisher. And I was doing these things already in like 8 or 9 hours, and then all of a sudden I was doing it in like 7 or 8. And that's a big leap. That saves you a lot of time. And at the end of the week, you've knocked out at least an extra page than you normally would. So I was really flabbergasted by this. But the most important thing to me, what sparked this entire process, was the fact that I would go to sleep and I started having vivid dreams again. Now, I want to make this clear. This is like 5 years after me first having that thought of, I'm not dreaming anymore. Why is that? And I couldn't really figure it out for the longest time, like I said. But when I put all these pieces together and I decided to live a more mentally natural life, because we talk about like natural eating all the time, but we're not talking about natural thinking. I think that we need to get back to natural thinking in this world, because when you see people who are just constantly on their phones, constantly on Twitter, it's not a pretty sight. You know, it's no different than just eating Cheetos all day. Like, it's gonna cause some side effects. The internet is essentially mental candy at this point. You can't have too much or else you're gonna get cavities. It's as simple as that. I'm not saying never have candy. I'm not saying don't enjoy Halloween. But when you're just constantly eating mental candy, it's gonna put cavities and rot in your brain. And I realized this. And so getting through all of this process of putting myself back into a state of natural thinking created an efficiency and created a clarity and a contentment like I had never seen before. Or at least, no, I had seen before, but I hadn't seen in such a long time I'd forgotten it even existed. And I started to really think about that, and I was like, my phone throws me into these whirlwinds of emotions when I am scrolling through it. I mean, in one instant, I'm watching a cat fall and I'm laughing. The next instant, I'm watching someone, saving my faith in humanity and I want to cry. And then in the next instant, I'm watching a car crash. That's just because someone was an idiot. So now I'm angry at them. And then in the next one, I'm watching someone analyze, a movie from 1984 and some in-depth review and doing a giant essay about how it's a metaphor for, Eastern European economic politics. And it's just like, this is too much. It's pulling me in too many directions, and I'm addicted to it. This is wrong. I'm addicted to having emotional whirlwinds, and getting off of it made it where I started having these beautiful dreams again. These things that were so enlightening, these things that made me feel so calm and relaxed, seeing beautiful vistas again, riding on the backs of elephants, hanging out with tigers, talking to people that have been dead for years, just having this mental clarity. I reconnected with what I think is the universe itself. I really saw it, I felt it, I experienced it again. I realized it wasn't that I was too old to dream, it's that I was too rotten to do it. And so by stepping back into a state of natural thinking, I was able to achieve that again, to the point now where not only do I sleep and get excited knowing that there's probably a cool dream coming, and I hope I remember it the next day, but on top of that, I feel more rested. I sleep less hours now. And it turns out, I did Google this, when you have dreams, you sleep better, which is pretty cool. Except for the dreams when the guy is chasing you with the axe. That's always the worst one. Or when you fall. I hate it when you fall, because you fall and then you trip in the bed for real, your whole body jolts. That's the worst. You wake up, you're like, and you got that adrenaline. That's the worst. But aside from those little problems here and there, that is something that I'm so glad I have back. And that's something I'm going to hold on to, and I'm going to stick with natural thinking, because I think natural thinking is the best way to think. And that's what I think about that. And now that's what I'm drawing here. A vivid, beautiful dream I had before my thinking got ruined with all this mental candy. I remember one time it's not a memory, it was a dream, but it was so beautiful it became a memory. I never forgot it. I was standing inside this empty train station. It was pretty dark. Only the sunlight was coming through the opening where the train would enter and leave. And there was no internal light. There was beams and pillars of steel, hard steel, that were everywhere. And I remember looking at all the trains that were quiet and empty in the station. I was the only one in it. And I looked over to the tracks, and I saw on the tracks my violin. At that time, I had a black violin. But what was interesting about it was my violin, except it was huge. It was the size of a car. And it was sitting above the tracks. It wasn't actually on them. It was hovering. And instead of it having a bridge to hold the strings, I could see it had a bench holding the strings. And so from there, I walked over to it wearing a full suit, and I could tell it wanted me to just get on. And so I climbed aboard the violin, and I carefully put my legs in between the strings, and I made it a point not to touch them because they were covered in rosin dust, like so much rosin dust. I feel like if I'd plucked one of the strings, it would have been snowing. And I got on the violin's bench, and when I did, the violin started to move forward towards the sunlight. As we came closer to the entrance and exit of this train station, I realized that the train station was carved into a big mountain. And on both sides of us, as we exited, I feel like the violin had personality. That's why I say a plural. I realized on both sides of us were these tall walls of stone, because this had been carved into a mountain. And from there, I could see on both sides, the stone was covered in these beautiful, glistening vine leaves that had little flowers on them. And it was almost like they were stars. They were shining. They were so bright. And when the violin was finally fully out of the station, it slowed and then lowered and then shot right up and went straight up, and I could see the vines and the flowers on both sides just zooming by at this ridiculous rate, and it was so beautiful. It was like stars shooting past me at warp speed, and then before I knew it, I had reached right above the mountain, and I was far into the sky and flying into the clouds, and I could see down, and it was so bright. It was blue and green, and I could see lakes, and it was so beautiful. It almost made me cry in my sleep. It was incredible. I felt like I had stepped into heaven. There was nowhere on earth this beautiful. There was nowhere on earth this breathtaking, and I was looking at it while riding a flying violin. It was such a beautiful thing. It was such an amazing adventure. And we just flew through the sky, and the wind consumed me. It was so wonderful to have it just going through my entire body. And I've wanted that dream again so many times, and I don't know if I'll ever have that dream again, and if I do, it'll be that good. But it was so much fun. I loved it so much. I couldn't help but when I woke up from that to think about it all day and fixate on it and remember everything and try to imagine when I was taking out the trash, checking the mail, whatever mundane task we've all been tasked with doing so that society can hold together. I kept thinking about it, trying to imagine like I was there again. And I would hate to ever miss out on a dream like that again, because I needed to fall asleep with my phone on, because my brain was addicted to all this candy.